Hello friends, this is what I have been up to today. And I thought that I would bring you along with me as I make one more, just so I can show you how it's done. It's very simple. I'm sure you could figure it out for yourself, but what the heck, let's make a tutorial. So these are woven journal cards from long, thin paper scraps. And this is the woven side, and then some of them, like this one, I sewed this like parchment-y paper to the back. This one, my sewing machine was acting funny and skipping a bunch of stitches, so I sewed a bunch over here, but I kind of like the way it turned out. And then like this one that's all pink and blue, I went ahead and backed with my blue cabbage dyed paper. And then these other ones, I liked the front design obviously a lot, but I liked the back design so much I didn't want to totally cover it up. And so I've made them into journal cards by just sewing on some vellum so that you can still kind of see the back design through, but it's muted and there's a nice flat surface, and I feel like you could easily write on this and read it. So and then the vellum and the parchment and stuff, I didn't glue on, I just sewed it on. You totally could glue it on instead. You could do whatever you want. And you could turn these into all sorts of things that aren't journal cards. But I wanted to make journal cards because I like journal cards. I like using journal cards. This one I have just woven and I have not backed yet. So that one is going over in my pile next to my sewing machine. It's not much of a pile, it's one card right now. But yeah, I really like how these have turned out. If you wanted to, you could like further embellish the front with like a focal point or something. I just really like the way that the woven texture looks, and I love all the little peaks of all the little pictures. I ended up with a ton of long, thin strips of paper like this when I made my Kitchen Witch companion cookbook junk journal type thing, because I used a lot of 12 by 12 calendar sheets, or really 12 by 24, and a lot of 12 by 12 scrapbook paper, and I made it basically 8.5 by 11 page sizes. So I was chopping off an inch, and I was chopping off a little more on the other side, and I think the other side pieces I've put somewhere else, like the thicker pieces, I think I've put in my food ephemera so that I could use them in my cookbook somehow. I'm not really sure. They're not in my scrap basket, but these were all in my scrap basket. And a lot of them had like a bit of the, like this is all this one is borders from the teapot calendars. And then like, so like this was a border from a teapot calendar. This is a picture from a teapot calendar. It looks like on this one, I left it all together. In a lot of the other ones, I went back and I sliced the border apart from the photo. So like, here's one where it's the photo, and I just used my paper trimmer to do that. And then I had so many of them that I sorted them by color. And I might be kind of low actually on, let's toss those away. We're not going to use those again. I might be kind of low on my shorter strips. I set aside, basically these ones are all at least 7 inches long. And then these were all at least 5-ish inches long. And so I figured these would be my horizontal ones and these would be my vertical ones. I might actually be running low on the shorter ones. So we'll see what we can do. What I might do, I'm going to start with the blue because I have a lot of blue. And also like it's color. Yep. So I can use the blue ones. I can use some of the neutral ones. And then if I have like, I'm sure I have more than I need to go across. So then I can take some of the ones that I'm not using longwise and turn those into my shorter strips. So there's all sorts of ways that you can go about this. I like to Obviously, a lot of these are double-sided, so like this is got red on this side, but it's blue on this side. So we'll figure that out as we go. And there's like some green in here, whatever, you know. So I'm just using a Trader Joe's greeting card because it's 5x7 as like a template for me to line things up to. You don't need to do that. Actually, the first ones that I did that I've now tossed across the room, so I can't show you, I wove them bigger and then trimmed them down afterwards, which landed me with now I have these like, I'm kind of sad about it because I really like these woven scrap bits. But I figured I couldn't really, my journals couldn't really handle a journal card bigger than 5x7, so I did need to trim them down. I don't really know. I guess I might use these as like snippet roll kind of things. So I didn't want to toss them. I tossed like one that I didn't like as much, but I've never made a snippet roll or roll or strip or whatever. But I feel like I'm halfway there with those, so I might as well. And I'm just going to go ahead and start with this one. And I'm going to use art glitter glue for all of this. It's been a little bit misbehaving because we've had a lot of changes in the weather. So it's been kind of overflowing a little bit. And just pop a couple dots of glue there and stick that there. Line that up with the edge of the card. And then, so I like to build, I mean, it doesn't really matter whether you put your, in weaving terms, your warp, or in weaving terms, you would always put your warp first. And I do prefer to do my warp first, but you can do your warp or your weft. It doesn't really matter. In this section, I spent several minutes debating out loud the merits of placing similar looking strips next to each other versus 2 strips apart from each other or whatever, and ultimately decided that this is the sort of activity that is better when you don't overthink it the way that I was. So I'm cutting out all of that dialogue. I don't know, it all looks good. I'm not worried about it. Don't overthink it, guys. I just overthought that so hard, and you don't need to do that. I'm just going to, and actually really the beautiful thing about this is you really don't have to overthink it. You can just do it. And you're going to end up with a beautiful product. It's going to end up really cool. One thing I will say is that like I like to have the strips really close to each other because I don't want to have a lot of like space between the weaving. And also, if you get them too close to each other where there's like literally, so I'll move this off the card so you can see there is a little bit of space in between those 2 strips that I'm leaving. And I'm leaving that on purpose because I want to make sure that when I actually go to weave the other strips in between, that these aren't like rubbing up against each other and fighting each other for reasons. Okay. So as I'm building my warp, I'm building it on this top weft strip, basically. For weaving, those who aren't familiar with weaving terminology, the warp are the threads that go vertical and the weft are the threads that go horizontal. And my fashion design teacher in college taught me that the way that you remember that is there's 2 ways. One, warp is with an A that points up, and so it goes up and down. And then E, you are thinking capital letters. The E has the 3 lines that go across, so it's like the weft. Actually, I think I came up with that one because that one made more sense to me than what she told me. What she told me was that when you say warp, your mouth kind of moves open in a long ways direction. And then when you say weft, your mouth kind of smiles wide. Maybe my mouth doesn't move as dramatically as hers does. So to me, thinking about the visuals of the letter is more helpful. So as I'm building my warp, I'm building it along this top weft strip, leaving just the tiniest bits of space between each strip and really trying to keep them parallel. I don't want to, like, it's okay if it ends up, you know, a little cattywampus or whatever by the end. But that's not what I prefer. That's not what I'm going for. And then for a little variety, I'm going to do another border one right next to this one. And what else was I saying? Okay, so we're just using just a little bit of glue to secure each one. I'm using the Art Glitter brand glue, which I always like to use when I'm doing paper crafts and I need things to dry quickly. And okay, so I'm building along this top weft strip, and I'm just alternating placing a strip underneath and placing a strip on top. And that's how we're building our warp. And when I get to be the width of this greeting card, I'll be done building the warp. And the weaving itself will create, like as you do it, the weaving itself will create enough structure that you don't need a lot of glue. I do like to use glue like throughout, but you don't need that much. It's really for reinforcing. If you didn't mind adjusting things or things moving slightly out of place as you did this, you could skip the glue altogether probably. Maybe not for this first bit, but once you've got your warp built, you could probably skip the glue if you wanted to. I don't want to. I don't feel like gambling like that. Okay, and then it looks like we have room for one more strip, pretty much. Again, just leaving that littlest amount of space. And here I'll show you. So without the white card underneath, maybe you can see that. But you can see a little bit of the table underneath between each strip, but it's just the tiniest bit. And your preferences may differ. You may prefer more space between weaving, between the strips. I want less space. Like I want pretty much no space between the strips. But once you start weaving, the paper that moves in between the warp strips is going to fill up the space in the, like that space is going to get filled with the weft. So I'm not worried about it. I am going to cut these down to size. So you can see I'm building quite a collection of this length of strip from doing this same thing before. And it looks like I'm actually not, yeah, it looks like I'm really not going to have enough of these. So I might have to pull from something else, but we'll get creative. We'll figure it out. I'm not worried. Let's do that. All right, cool. And we'll just start pulling. So now, so you can see this strip has gone over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over. And we just want to alternate how we're doing that. So this time, all the vertical strips, all the warp strips that this weft strip went over, we want this one to go under. So I'm just going to go ahead. This would be a lot easier with a shuttle, but we're working with what we got here. So I'm just going to pull these up. I guess maybe I'll use my scissors as kind of a shuttle. And then we'll just stick that under there. And then we will push it up to where we want it to go. And I really like to push it in real tight to fill up that space. And then I just go ahead and I don't worry about the places where this strip is over the warp strips, like here, 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 and here, not gonna get glued. But wherever I can lift up the warp strips to just put a dot of glue, I'm gonna do that. And that is, guys, pretty much the whole method for the weaving, just for the record. I will show you adding a couple more weft strips just so you can follow along. Ooh, I was gonna do this. Do I want to do this side or do I want to be? I think I want to use the white side. That's not what I thought I was going to want, but that's what I want. Okay. And so this time, all the ones that this one went over, we're going to pull those up. So it's the opposite set of what we pulled up last time. And there's only 4. I'll just use that as a little makeshift shuttle. Push that up there. Push it all the way up. And sometimes, like if your strip's a little longer than it needs to be, like this, you can kind of move it side to side and pick which bits you want to show. Like I want that to show, and I want my mom's handwriting with the 4 to show. I'd rather have that than whatever was showing when it was scooted over. So I will go ahead and glue this down just because it's easy to lift up. Anything that's easy to lift up and get glue under, I'm gonna glue. Anything that just feels like it would be too much trouble or I would have to flip the whole thing over, I'm just not gonna worry about it. And then at the end, if I have to trim it, I'll just check that everything on the edges is glued together. And if there's anything on the edges that still needs to be reinforced with glue, I'll go ahead and reinforce those bits. But along the way, I'm not gonna worry about much else other than what you see here. Alrighty, yeah, so it's just repeat that same method all the way down the length. I'm doing 5 by 7. You don't have to do 5 by 7. You could do literally any size you want. I am going to include some of these other papers that I have. Yeah, so you'd think that like putting 2 white strips next to each other would feel really repetitive. I bet it's not going to, because you're not going to have white next to white. They're going to be catty corner because we're weaving. So let's just see how it looks. Let's pick up these 5 strips. Use our scissors again as a little makeshift shuttle. Pop that right up there. And there we go. I quite like the way that looks. So yeah, we're gonna do it. Okay, so I think that you've pretty much got the idea of this. I will go ahead and speed up the tape for the rest of this process. And here I'm just cutting this kind of thicker strip into 2 thinner strips, and I really fucked that up. It slipped. Use them anyway. And actually probably I will just use them right next to each other, and that way they'll correct for each other's size. They'll correct for each other's mismatched shape, but I'll get the look of the thinner blocks that I prefer. You'll see what I mean in just a second. It might be worth mentioning that if you do this with thicker strips, obviously you can cover more area in less time and less work. I like the look of thicker strips. I like the look of thinner strips. For these materials specifically, I mostly just liked being able to separate the colors of the borders from the colors of the photos and sort them separately. It just gave me more creative control. And so that meant thinner strips. And if I have thinner strips going one way, I prefer to have thinner strips going the other way. But you could totally have like thin strips going one way and thick strips going the other way. There's no rules against that. That can look quite cool. And so here, you'll see what I mean. Like it looks like these, you know, you don't see the silver. It doesn't look wrong to have 2 silver strips next to each other because they're still alternating. Okay. And like I said, this, like using the glue dot, like I would, okay, if you were doing this and you wanted to use, like do this as quickly as possible and use as little glue as possible, I would glue down like here and here on each one and just skip gluing down all of this. But I just want to make sure these are really, I don't know, I just want them to be really well reinforced. I want everything to stay where it goes, and I don't mind doing a couple extra dots of glue. I didn't really dream that I would be making additional strips on purpose out of a chocolate wrapper. But here we are. Scissors actually make a pretty good shuttle, not gonna lie. Yeah, more of interest. Okay. I cut one more chocolate strip, but I don't. I mean, let's see what it looks like. Because I really only need like one more strip, and I'm kind of thinking like 3 next to each other might be too repetitive, but it might be fine. It's probably going to be fine. I am going to switch the direction of it though from the previous one, because otherwise it'll look too much like the original packaging. I think I like that. Yeah, that's fine. My toxic trait is that when I cut thin strips of paper off of other pieces of paper to trim them down to the right size, I think that I can turn them into art, and so I can't throw them away. And I am right, but that doesn't necessarily make it not a toxic trait. So here we have a beautiful paper weaving, and I'm just gonna grab my trimmer. Oh no. There we go. And trim it back down to size. I'm gonna start by trimming right along this like the edge of that first strip. So we're just chopping off all these little loose bits here. Toss that. And then I know I want it to be 5 wide. So we'll just pop it right along that 5 line and go. And now like this I can part with. I can come to terms. I've come to terms with the fact that this is not, I could turn it into art, but it's not worth it to me anymore. It's not that I couldn't. It's not that it can't be done. It could be done. It's just not going to get done by me in time to be worth it. All right, so now we line it up to the 7. Close that up. And chop off those little tails. And that's it. And I'm not attached to these scraps at this point. They're cool. I could turn them into art, but I'm just kind of done looking at them. So here is the front of our little paper weaving that we've just made. And here's the back of it. And this one, the back, I'm not super in love with, and I like that like the front is all blue, and I still have the other half of the cabbage dyed paper that I put on the back of this one. So I think I'll use that to back this. And I'm just gonna go do that on my sewing machine really quick, and I'll be right back with you. Alrighty, so I've just sewn the backing onto these two. I had half a sheet left of each of these backing papers that I used before, and I do not trim these with scissors because I like the torn edge, and this is faster, I think. So there we go, there's one, and here's the one we just did. Not me creating more paper strips as we speak. Okay, there we go. So there's the one we just wove together, and there's the lovely blue cabbage dyed back. I feel like it doesn't look very blue on camera, but here's some white paper. It's blue, and it's dot grid too, and it's really lovely. So I'm really pleased with that. And then this is the one that I wove earlier and just backed. Yep, so there we go. Woven paper journal cards. How fun is that? I think it's pretty dang fun. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please do give it a thumbs up or a like or whatever you call it here on YouTube. And please do subscribe to this channel if you found this helpful and you're not subscribed already. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye, y'all.